I remember when The Witness came out, it was a huge deal. Everyone was talking, and the discourse seemed almost entirely focused on if it did or did not qualify as a walking simulator. Recently, that kind of discussion has died down, and being labeled a walking simulator doesn't have the negative connotation that it once did. I've even spoken to people who really enjoy walking simulators. Games like Firewatch and Journey did a lot to benefit the genre and pro-walking simulator arguments because they were able to engross you completely in their atmosphere. Being immersed like this can make for an unforgettable experience, so it was only a matter of time before a game would come along to question what if that atmosphere and environment is disturbing, upsetting, and bleak. Ebb Software's SCORN takes place in an H.R. Giger-blasted hellscape. It lives in the shoes of games like Soma and Amnesia, with the player controlling a humanoid creature in winding organic hallways and mechanical nightmarish locales with no real chance of survival. It certainly looks oppressive and dangerous from the outside, but that's where SCORN misses its biggest mark. You would think that in this world you would be under constant threat and that tension would be high almost constantly. But on the contrary, you spend most of your time alone solving puzzles to progress through maze-like environments, almost never feeling like you're actually in any real danger. It's a good thing, then, that those maze-like environments are absolutely breathtaking. Though the entire game has an overlay of film grain to hide some sloppy texture work, the lighting is where SCORN really shines. The biggest issue with the game is its color work. The game is desaturated to hell and back, making differentiating spaces and objects from one another an extremely daunting task. This could have been mitigated by better level design, but SCORN's environments all end up feeling extremely uniform, making it extremely easy to get lost. Thankfully, you're never too far away from a landmark of some kind that'll help you orient yourself, but you won't be spending enough time in any area to truly be tasked with full memorization of the map. You certainly won't be able to go through the game without getting lost at least once, I can tell you that much. Some brighter colors on usable objects could have really helped make what ends up being a frustrating item hunt into a much more streamlined experience. It might detract from the immersion, but not any more than the already used white outline effect to indicate interactable objects. Thankfully, being lost isn't the worst thing that can happen to you in SCORN. No matter what room you're in, there will always be something to look at and take in. It's just a shame that no matter what you choose to look at, it'll undoubtedly be some mix of muted grays, muddy greens, and deep fleshy pinks that really do no service to the otherwise impressive modeling and sound work. The sound of your footsteps, bass-boosted ambient background music, and the humming of machines are your only real companions in SCORN's world. A pervasive sense of dread oozes from every fiber of this soundtrack, and in a game with no jump scares, you really get a lot of uninterrupted time to soak in the majesty of its lower register. This in hand with the otherworldly screeches and gurgles of the few living creatures you'll come across in SCORN's world make getting immersed an enjoyable treat. Near the beginning of the game, you'll remove a living creature from a pod on the wall and then cart it around the room doing unspeakable things to it to open the next door. The sound design here is just fantastic. The performance that this actor gives is extremely believable and sells the horrific nature of your actions. Performances like this are going to be your major highlight between puzzles. Each puzzle isn't exactly difficult, but they take a few minutes to finish. Meanwhile, you'll be hearing the same sound effects over and over and over again. The developers thankfully did their due diligence to slow down, speed up, and otherwise manipulate the sounds to where they don't sound exactly the same, but some of these puzzles could have used a few more sound effects. After a few minutes in any puzzle, you'll start noticing the repeats. It can really get under your skin if you get stuck on a puzzle for too long. There isn't much to be said otherwise on the puzzles. They're fun, and a lot of thought went into their mechanics to make sure that they're adequately difficult. So let's talk about something I do have a lot to say about. Mechanically, SCORN is really uninteresting. You can walk, slowly run, interact with puzzles or objects, heal, and shoot. This is a far cry from other first-person horror titles like Alien Isolation or The Forest. There's no hiding mechanic, no food or stamina, or much of anything for you to keep in mind while you wait for the melee gun to recharge after your 2 allotted attacks. Built on the Unreal 4 engine, SCORN feels mechanically deserted, with only a few standard mechanics that come out of the box. There's no such thing in SCORN as jumping, dodging, or guarding incoming attacks. Of course, you don't really need much more than the basic core gameplay mechanics for a 4-hour puzzle game, but a game like SCORN doesn't really need combat at all, in the same way that Amnesia: The Dark Descent doesn't need combat. The enemies in SCORN are generally best avoided. This is not because they are exceptionally difficult, but because they have a lot more HP than you're able to deal with for most of the game. If you do decide to fight, there is no way to dodge incoming attacks. So combat is almost always a battle of attrition instead of skill. The only thing that could be considered skill-based in SCORN's combat is the extra damage that you seem to be able to do when you hit an enemy in the head. When you can't avoid enemies, fighting them is a process of kiting them around cramped arenas, baiting attacks, and then getting in small hits when you can. That is, unless you feel confident that you'll be able to heal yourself from the damage that they output. In that case, I feel like most players will probably approach the enemies in SCORN the same way that a person would approach a brick wall with their face. Most enemies have a ranged attack and can attack you even while you're trying to avoid or kite them due to a lack of any real dodge mechanic. No matter who you are or what your disposition is on video games, you will inevitably find yourself feeling as though the combat is a chore in SCORN for one simple reason. It's just not fun. Just walk away, shoot, repeat. Or, before you get the gun, walk away, bait an attack, rush the creature at melee, and try to land the 2 attacks that you can make before your weapon needs to recharge. A recharge that lasts about 5 seconds, by the way. When you finally do get to take an enemy down in melee, you're snapped into an animation to give you a sense of a glory kill. Why SCORN felt the need for players to feel cool when killing its enemies in melee, I will never understand. Nothing else in this game makes you feel like you've got any sense of handle on the environment or enemies. Nothing else in the game incentivizes you to interact with its combat systems except for these death animations. They're extremely out of place and antithetical to the tone of every other aspect that the game presents you with. It's also not helped by the fact that the snap into and out of the animations are very sloppy, likely breaking the average player's immersion as it did mine. This is all to say that seeing such impressive and imaginative environments with nothing mechanically interesting to do in them can't help but leave one feeling frustrated by the wasted potential. So after seeing all of this, you're probably wondering, but what is the game about? Unfortunately, that's not really a question that anyone can answer. I don't even have to put a spoiler warning here. There's nothing to spoil. SCORN is only 3 or 4 hours long. It has no dialogue, no journal entries to read, and no real characters. If you're here for the answer to the mystery, you'll leave empty-handed. Even after playing the game and then seeing it again after watching someone else play it all the way through, the best I can say is that it's completely up to interpretation. As for my interpretation, I interpret it as a waste of money. SCORN is worth $10 at most. Asking $30 for it on Steam is just insincere. If you liked what you saw in this video, I'd recommend waiting for it to be on sale. You'll kick yourself if you pay full price for this. It begs to be as immersive as possible and would fit perfectly in with some VR games where immersion is king. Though obviously very inspired in its art and sound direction, SCORN is lacking in practically every other category. If you're the type of person that enjoys being immersed in environments, puzzles, and emaciated combat, SCORN might be for you. But for me, SCORN gets a 4 out of 10. Bad. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Special thanks to our producers Anthony Wumbo, James Novak, John Foreman, and Zachary Coroner.
Feel at ease. You passively think.